Papa here, and one of the games I like to play is Kerbal Space Program, and I'm going to go to orbit in approximately 10 minutes with a brand new career mode game set on normal difficulty. First thing I want to do is come into the missions and select launch a vessel, as well as perform some science from Kerbin. I'll use those to jumpstart my science program so I can make it to orbit on my second flight. For my first flight, I'm simply getting a control module, a parachute, and I will also place in an engine. There's not a lot else I can do. Make sure to stage the engine separate from the parachute, otherwise you're going to have a rough flight. I'm also going to add 3 mysterious goo canisters so I can collect enough science. Here I am. I'm going to run the mysterious goo on the ground, collect my science, launch, do a crew report, and also pick up the science reports from both remaining mysterious goos while clearing the air, and then simply time warp back down to the ground, deploying my parachute accordingly, because the last thing we want to do is crash on our first flight. And voila, we're about to land. There we go, recover our vessel, and you will see that you have 31 science, and we'll have collected a little bit of money in the process as well, and Jebediah will have gained some experience. Not a lot, but a little bit. Next, we want to come into the science. We want to get engineering 101 so we can have a decoupler. We want to get basic rocketry so we can start to get some boosters, as well as liquid fuel cell and general rocketry so we can have liquid fueled engines. Next, we also want to upgrade our launch pad, pay the $75,000. That will allow us to get a rocket large enough to get into orbit with the parts that we have. Pick up the remaining missions, escape the atmosphere, as well as orbit Kerbin. And now on to the vehicle assembly building. Time to build our new spaceship. Command module, parachute, of course. Here's our decouplers that we got with engineering. Happy to have those. Now we'll start to grab 3 of these larger fuel tanks. Relatively speaking larger. These things are actually still quite small. Want the swivel engine. We'll want that later on as we are going towards orbit. Put in another decoupler because we're going to have multiple stages here. Another set of 3 liquid fuel tanks. 1 more swiveled engine. Now we're going to cap that off with another decoupler. We're going to put our medium-sized solid fuel booster. It's primarily as a source for holding some other boosters, but in the meantime we're also going to put in a couple fins on each of the stages. They help some, but let's face it, at this level Jeb's not the best pilot. 3 more of the large boosters. We're going to fin those things up as well. This rocket will be a little unstable. It might go cranking on you, but there's always revert unless you're doing hard mode. Now we want to make sure to stage our 3 large boosters separate from the medium booster. We'll actually fire all 4 during the launch process. Last, set the thrust on the large boosters down to about 60%. Here we are on our upgraded launch pad. We're going to get our SAS turned on so Jebediah can help steer, and go ahead and hit go. I've sped up the editing on the video here at this stage, but you can get the general drift. When we hit about 2,700, 3,000 meters, I'll fire the center solid booster. That'll speed us up a little bit, plus it'll allow me to jettison all the solids and that excess weight at the same time. Get rid of those. Now we have our first of our liquid fuel stages, and that swivel engine becomes very important in helping us bend over and start our gravity turn. I probably could have been a little more aggressive on the gravity turn on this flight. As we'll see later, there's some implications, but in the meantime, I'm still gaining speed, gaining altitude, as well as picking up lots of log first, because this is literally the second flight Jeb has been making. Now we'll jettison our first liquid fuel stage, have our remaining, come out here, start in map view, start checking our apoapsis, see where it is, see how our speed is. Again, throttle is still fairly low, a little less than 50%, which is more than sufficient to get us to orbit. Now I want to track the apoapsis a bit more. Come in, check my speed, make sure I'm not overheating. And we want to watch the apoapsis climb out to a little over 70,000 meters, maybe about 75 is where I stopped this time around. And now simply it is coast out to space. In order to get our full orbit, we don't have nodes at this point, so we've got to get pointed prograde, give it the gas when we hit our apoapsis, let it chase out a little bit, kill the motors, catch back up to the apo again, and repeat that a couple times until we've achieved a proper orbit. There we go, our periapsis just jumped to where we're at, our apoapsis was up there. I fast forwarded the time a little bit, I'm now at my apoapsis and I burned what little fuel I had left. I wasn't aggressive enough on my gravity turn, so therefore I'm going to have to do some atmospheric braking and allow the atmosphere to slow me down a little bit so I can get back to Kerbin on my first flight rather than stranding Jeb up in orbit. Here I'm watching my aero braking, see my apoapsis jump back around to where I am, my periapsis collapsing well into the atmosphere. Now I'm about ready to jettison my remaining fuel stage that got me into space. It's just been adding some additional drag for me. And finally, I am going to ride my capsule through the atmosphere back in and allow the capsule's bottom heat shield in order to absorb all the heat so I don't overheat and die. Clearly you don't want to flip around and let your parachute take that, because parachutes tend not to hold up as well as the bottom of the capsule. As you can see, my surface speed is dropping significantly at this point, along with my altimeter as I'm burning through the atmosphere. I've cooled off. Time to go ahead and deploy my parachute, since it looks like I'm coming down on the night in the mountains. Want to be on the safe side. And finally, we have landed and completed an orbit on our second space flight. Picked up a bit more science, a bit more money, and Jeb has made it up a level. And that's how you go to orbit in about 10 minutes in Kerbal Space Program Career Mode. Thank you.